Pretty good question here. If you were in charge of USA basketball, would your developmental system what would it look like for youth through high school? In a broad sense. I mean, that's a long, that would take you that'd be a book for you, but.
I mean, to me, the biggest initial changes that I would make is starting out, players would play in 3-on-3 leagues, not 5-on-5. You would stay on lower baskets for a longer period and play with, smaller basketballs for a longer time. Those to me are every time somebody talks about, a change to the rules or zone defense or, pressing and whatever, to me, the answer is always play 3-on-3. If you're playing 3-on-3, it takes care of all of those problems. And then people talk about, well, we need to develop shooters like in Europe. And that's a point that I've argued, because if you look at all the best shooters in the NBA, like 9 out of 10 of them are Americans. But let's go with it. Europeans develop better shooters. In my experience, one of the major reasons why that may be true, again, based on my experience, our players in my last club, our boys didn't move to a 10-foot hoop until under 14s. So that means when they were 12, 13 years old, they're still playing on an 8.5-foot hoop. So they were not chucking the ball up at the basket, and granted, these players were smaller than the average 12 or 13-year-old playing in the States. Probably, a lot of late matures, especially, as a population. So, maybe that's why they needed to stay on a lower basket a little bit longer. But I mean, I had a 6'3" point guard on my team, and he was dunking his last year in as a 12, 13-year-old, because he was playing on an 8.5-foot hoop. He was already 6'3". He was the one early mature. So he could dunk before he moved to a 10-foot hoop, when he was 13, 14 years old. So, but I just think that every time we talk about shooting problems, most of them originate with when players initially start playing. And it's because they're using a ball that's too big for their hands, which changes the way that you're going to hold the ball. And then you're shooting on a basket that's too high for you. I forget the math, but I mean, it's something like, if you take an average, third grader shooting on a 10-foot hoop, it'd be like an NBA player, shooting on like an 18-foot hoop or something, and we would think that's absurd, but we think it's appropriate for a third grader. So I just think, for me, those would be the first 3 changes that I would make. Lower the baskets, appropriately sized ball, play 3-on-3. And then once we get to 12, 13 years old, then we can start to, move the baskets up and move to 5-on-5 play and so on and so forth.